Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 8th of July, and joining me on this edition, Steve Withers.
Protesting is patriotic.
Ed Selley.
You were on the ceiling.
And special guest, Mark Botwright.
Solid dude.
Good dude. Right, before we go any further, the podcast is going on its summer holidays. We're packing our bags. Well, we're not, but we're off for the next 2 weeks. We are back again on the 29th of July, so if you do miss us...
Tough.
Yeah, basically.
You can just do a Dave equivalent. You can revisit any one of our classic episodes.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're in doubt, do a search.
You can find the classic episode.
Do a search for the original Theodore Rex episode, where we got distracted by the existence of Theodore Rex. It's not. It's the antidote to scripted comedy, because it isn't. It's more just
we were about that day.
Four incredibly confused people just laughing a lot. But I consider that one of our high points.
Yeah, and if you want something really childish, you could search out the episode where we talk about the joy of sex 3D.
Yeah, so I mean, there are some many high points that you could entertain yourself with in 2 weeks, although that does unfortunately give an unreasonable standard that we'd have to try and live up to in future podcasts. So be careful how many of them you go at.
Just play podcast roulette. Just go into we're on Spotify now, people. We are on Spotify, believe it or not. We're famous. So just go in there and just play, podcast roulette and see what crap you come up with.
You've got a 90% chance that Steve will be talking about a soundbar, though.
No. That's a more recent development. We can be. There can be the is 4K
used to be
Blu-ray
hodged with Android boxes. Do you remember?
Yes. And we can also many of our arguments over 3D TV as well. Although let's not resuscitate any of those anytime soon. So. Yeah, the possibilities are endless. There you go. Job done. Actually, couldn't we start mining these for, people?
Ideas?
No. Repeat. We could do a segment of modern, like a clip show. We could record some new stuff and then intersperse it with some classic stuff.
Like the BBC does.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone else does it. Why can't we?
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a computer program somewhere that could make a vague facsimile of this podcast. A fairly kind of retarded HAL 9000 or something. And knock something into shape that would resemble us.
Or it's just, lucky dip, you listen to the podcast and it could be a review of a TV from 2019, or it could be a review of a Pioneer Kuro. You never know.
As we're saying, there's not much, TVs can't get much bigger, or, they can't improve the resolution anymore.
This is as good as a picture is ever going to get.
Yeah.
So other television goals.
That's when audio comes in handy, because a lot of stuff Ed talks about hasn't changed in decades.
Exactly. I am timeless.
I'm about to talk about a subwoofer that is basically 4 years old. So there you go.
Excellent.
Okay, I think
stay tuned.
Yeah, but anyway, we'll be back in 2 weeks. We might have some new content for you by then as well. So. Tune in again. Right, so just briefly, what's everybody been doing? What's everybody been working towards? Let's go to Ed first. He's always worth a listen.
Well, as I communicated with you last week in the podcast, I mentioned that I had a very sore elbow. And a couple of days after that, it was very, very sore, and then it started feeling a bit sort of squishy and wet inside. And I'm not a doctor, but I thought, do you know what? This doesn't feel
Hang
right.
on, if anybody's eating at this moment in time.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, we'll give it a minute or so. But no, I wandered off down the walk-in centre, which thankfully we still have.
Did you not at least do the joyous thing of Googling your symptoms to start?
No, I didn't. I figured Mark, under normal circumstances...
Self-diagnosis is one of the funnest things on the internet.
I agree, but given that it requires 2 arms to drive a car... I thought it was important to operate the car whilst I still could. So I wanted.
Have you only got 1 arm now?
Yes, it's been amputated above the elbow. No, an abscess was drained from the inside of my elbow joint. Some particularly unpleasant coloured fluid came out of that. It's doing a bit better.
How did you manage that?
Well, it is an aggravated part. It's something to do with RSI. Is aggravate,
I told you to stop all that wanking, didn't I?
I told you it's not my wanking arm. It's just down to just sheer typing stuff. So that's been sorted now. It's no longer quite such a sort of angry colour.
How are you type with your elbow? I can understand why you might have a wrist injury.
No,
from either wanking or typing.
No. Because I have my computer on a padded sort of table thing, and that has a wrist support, and actually the stresses go back to one of my elbows, which is weird, but my wrists are in perfect working order. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, no, you can't sue yourself.
No, this is absolutely true. I only have myself to blame. Another joy of self-employment. Otherwise, I've been doing plenty of work. Phil will have no doubt been, relieved, annoyed, irritated.
7 days into the month.
Only 7 days into July, the June reviews are up. So, we're just... hang on. I would like to point out that it was the 9th of June before the May reviews went up. So by Christmas... we'll be back on schedule. So we're doing all right. So there's some fresh stuff in the tank, and it's a lovely sunny day. You can probably tell from the fact that I'm already gibbering. I've spent plenty of time outside today at the Oni River Fest. They had a bar. It was great. So it's been good.
Yeah. Okay. Steve, what you been doing?
A bit of work, although not as much as I should have done, really. Calibration. Did a calibration. B7, which is blast from the past, and went to the movies and spent all the Thursday watching Stranger Things 3. So that's about it, really.
Right, I didn't bother because
enjoyed the weather.
I've got an LCD TV in at the minute, so I didn't bother watching. Oh wait, I've got an OLED.
Well, I was thoroughly enjoying it because I've now got internet connection fast enough to fully enjoy things like 4K.
Yeah.
So
let me just preface that with I had an LCD TV that only does 300 nits. I better make that point.
Yeah.
So,
but you actually, as with previous seasons of Stranger Things, that I don't know where that place she goes to when she's like looking at people, when she's basically remote viewing, I suppose is the best way of describing it, when it's all black with a wet black floor. Fantastic test for local dimming systems.
Yeah. I'm still not watching it. First of all, on a 300 nit LCD TV, I'll have to put a better one up there. I'll watch it initially. But anyway, anything else you've been up to, Steve, or is that it?
That's about it, really. Sit in the garden, enjoyed the weather, saw a snake. That was interesting. Wasn't expecting that.
You weren't in the bathroom at the time.
Well, I was that's a regular occurrence. No, I was in the garden. I heard this rustling behind me, so I turned around and there was a bloody snake, and it scarpered fairly quickly, which is just as well, because otherwise I would have scarpered fairly quickly. I appreciate there are no poisonous snakes apart from adders in this country, and adders are incredibly rare. It wasn't definitely not an adder. I'm pretty sure it was a grass snake, but it moved bloody fast.
I think you mean venomous.
Yes, venomous.
Yeah. We're back to Mr. Pedantry.
I'm sorry, that was top flight. That was perfect. It was short, it was absolutely correct, and it was perfectly timed. Top pedanting.
Thank you.
Excellent. Right, so Mr. Botwright's now been around for a few weeks, so you got the house sold yet?
No, as with most kind of house sales, things race along, and then all of a sudden you realise that someone somewhere else in the chain says, "Oh, do you need to have a survey done?" Oh, something. What you mean? We can't just exchange and then complete on the next day or something. So it's going to be a more of a protracted affair than I thought. But I have managed to use the time to defrost my freezer, which was immense fun. And then sticking my feet in the bucket of ice in this nice warm weather. And beyond that, I've done sweet Fanny Adams, to be honest. I'm just kind of waiting. We're waiting for something to happen with the house. Yeah.
Or God,
we're all waiting for that, Steve. Certainly our listeners are. No, just a case of waiting for things to move on. You feel like you should be doing something, but you can't. You can't just arrange for a removal van to wait outside the house and just keep tapping your watch, can you?
Well, exactly. I those are words to live by. Inspirational stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, while you're being inspirational, maybe you could be lucky for people, and maybe they could win some competitions that are running at the minute.
What have you been doing, Phil?
None of your bloody business.
Dying in the sun, basically.
At the minute, I feel like I've got sunstroke. I've been out in the sun all day. I was out in the sun all day, or most of the day Saturday, and then I set up some TVs and stuff and stayed indoors the rest of the day. But today I've been standing at the seafront in a field at a car show, and I did cover myself with sun cream and all the rest of it. I have learnt my lessons from previous.
What kind of temperatures did it get up to up there?
Oh, at least 20.
I was going to say this, but it's good going getting sunstroke up there.
Yeah,
well done.
That's it. Yeah, very
not
good.
like to get hypothermia most of the time, aren't you?
That's maybe the problem. But yeah, I mean, I had my hat on and everything, but I still, for some reason, just don't feel very well. But there you go. So that's what I've been doing. Loads of TV reviews. I'm kind of glad the podcast is actually not happening for the next 2 weeks, because it means I can crack on and try and get some of this backlog shifted, because I can't move for TVs at the minute. And it's at the point where it's like, well, where do you start with this? It's how it almost feels.
Yeah. You've got two
one
options.
that's been there since last year.
Right, you're speaking to the professionals here, Phil. You've got two options. Who's angriest for their stuff to come back?
Who's paying the most?
Yes, those are other considerations. Which one is blocking the most important part of your house that you'd like back? Or which one looks easiest to get out of the box? That's always that's a go-to if all else fails. So
Just go for the low-hanging fruit. Which ones are the quickest to review?
Yeah. If you're looking at an overwhelm point, you're looking at what can you do to start easing the flow.
No, it's got to the point where I have two that really should go out now, and I've got one turning up on Monday that's going to need a really quick turnaround, which then delays the others that are already here. So that's the way things are at the minute. So, but yeah, apart from that, that's all I've been doing. Right, let's get back to competitions. Mark's still feeling lucky. Go on, Mark.
All right, you can win a copy of Avengement on Blu-ray, and that one closes on 15th of July. What have we got? A copy of Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich on Blu-ray. That one closes 17th of July. We've also got copies of Criterion's July titles on Blu-ray, and that runs till 30th of July. And you can also win a Dali Catch portable Bluetooth speaker worth £329, and that one runs till the 4th of August.
Splendid.
Yeah, we don't put monetary values on the others.
That's because not
But
worth
for
it.
good reason sometimes.
How much would you pay for Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich on Blu-ray?
I'm assuming that's not aimed at children.
No, I don't think so. Possibly it might be aimed at Nazis.
I don't know. The use of the word littlest is confusing me. I don't want to watch a film with the use of the word littlest in it.
Yeah, that is a fair point. But sometimes titles can be very misleading. I once looked up a film called Babes in Toy Town, and that was not what I expected.
I have to say, Snatch was a bit of disappointment.
Okay, this is going downhill very quickly. Previous competition winners, Mark.
Yep, Obi-Wan Kenobi won a copy of Under Fire on Blu-ray.
I'm sure he's won before. That name sounds familiar.
Done.
Snatch was a tough wank, but not impossible.
Right, we'll be back.
It's like I had to stick in the comments section. I mean, obviously, after Midsummer was reviewed in the last podcast, I was bitterly disappointed to learn that John Nettles isn't in it. I mean, what's going on there?
Right, we'll be back with some hardware news in a minute. All right, serious heads on for the next 30 minutes. Moving on to hardware reviews, and Steve's going to review a subwoofer.
Yeah, by popular demand, I have been testing and reviewing the BK Electronics subwoofer. I think BK might want to take a leaf out of someone like Rel's book with their naming convention, because the Predator sounds like a much more fun thing to buy than the P12 300 SB PR. But I wanted to start with a name. That's crap. P12 300 SB PR. I was so bored typing that out in the review. I just saved it and then copied it in.
I do that all the time. But no, if they renamed it the Intestinator, come on.
Yeah, or the Trouser Soiler. The Trouser Soiler. You want to buy that, right? I mean, it's a brilliant sub, but it's got a bloody awful name. I mean, I appreciate the fact that
Bastard.
I appreciate the fact, I appreciate the fact that the name, the serial number, does at least tell you what it does. So P, Platinum Series, 12-inch driver, 300 watts of amplification, SB sealed box, and then the PR at the end, which is the new bit, is passive radiator. Because Ed, you actually reviewed the previous version of this sub, the P12 300 SB.
Outstanding value products I have ever tested for AVForums.
Interesting. So I had a look at your review to see if there was anything you didn't like about it, and they've done one change.
Not just copy and paste.
No, not to copy it.
Much.
Well, no, because annoyingly, the one you reviewed, because the original version, the P12, you actually mistitled it. because it should have been P12 300 SB, and then you should have had either F for front firing or downward
DF.
firing.
And I have a DF.
You didn't put the DF bit in, even though you were reviewing the downward firing one. So the original version, you either had a forward firing or downward firing version of this sub, and it was a sealed unit. You did point out that it had an auto power on feature, which you could not turn off. You can now do that, Ed. There you go. So they've been listening to. Yeah, so it does have that as well, but you can actually deactivate it if you don't want to do that, if you just want to turn it on and off with the power switch at the back. Looking at it, it's identical to the previous version, except obviously it now has it's now a forward firing, only available as a forward firing model for the obvious reason that there's a downward firing passive radiator in the bottom. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but so this is a sealed box. It hasn't got a port. There's no actual hole in it. But clearly, because it's got a passive radiator, it's not in. Though it's sealed, the air inside presumably can move around.
Yes, it's able to act against the radiator.
Because the passive radiator essentially is a driver, but without the actual the cone, the magnet and stuff behind it. Yeah. And what it does, a bit like a port, is it does, improve its performance at in the lower frequencies. I mean, they quote it as below 20 hertz, and I can believe that. And also, I think because it's passive radiator rather than being ported, perhaps a little bit more nimble than a ported sub might be. This sub is £450, and I think you made a similar point in your review, Ed, that if you can find better than this for double the money, I'd be really surprised. It is absolutely awesome. And for 450 quid, I can understand now why people have been going on about it so much on the forums of late.
I'm just looking at your. I'm just looking at it on the content management system. Can I just say your homage as the cover photo to my cover photo is both touching and of better quality?
It's almost identical, isn't it?
It is. It's really. If fans of continuity are going to love this pair of reviews.
I suppose there's only a certain number of ways you can photograph a cube.
Believe you me, I've tried almost all of them.
Anyway, it's well made. It's superbly well made, particularly for 450 quid. They've kept things, in terms of design, they've sensibly kept things simple, no nonsense, high quality components, well made, delivers the goods. They throw in some nice little extras. It comes with a 5-meter RCA to RCA cable, and also what's this new trick connection?
New trick connection,
yeah. With 3 cables at the end. So if you want to run it from a stereo amp or using the front, left, and right channels from your amplifier, that's basically means you can either use it within a home cinema setup or more of a hi-fi setup. Your choice, or you can do both. Actually, you can actually run it both at the same time.
How are they spelling new trick?
NEUTRK, I think.
Yeah, not NU, is it?
NEU.
No. Oh, good. Carry on.
And 300 watts, as the name suggests, 300 watts built in. I've got to say, I've listened.
Steve,
to
is that peak power or is that?
No, that's continuous power.
And it's Class AB. This is a meat and 2 vegetable amplifier.
So it's not digital amplification; it's proper amplification with a radiator at the back, because it does get quite warm. Which is handy in the winter, not so handy in the summer. It's a really, really well designed, solidly made, superbly put together subwoofer that delivers really low bass, really low, and all for 450 quid. So frankly, I've awarded it best in class, because having listened to a lot of 12-inch subs recently, even if you were up against something twice the price, it's still superior. So absolutely stellar performance by BK, and I'm well impressed.
Okay, and any naming of the subwoofer that you think might be better than what BK already do, then put them in the thread below.
Well, I can't believe it's that cheap.
I do think that.
What did you say, Steve?
I can't believe it's that cheap.
It's not very snappy. I do think that just a big metal plate with Thunder Bastard stamped on the top of it would just.
I think when you're talking about subs, there's no point being coy. You want to just get straight to the point.
Yeah,
but presumably, I haven't checked.
Time.
Steve, can you still buy the original non-radiator version? Because I'm assuming that this one needs a bit more room around it.
It does, and I think you pointed out that, particularly with the downward firing one, you could slot it in just about anywhere.
Yeah, in my old setup, I did. It really did used to have to work in a very confined space indeed, and it did so seamlessly for many years.
So they're not reinventing the wheel with this subwoofer, but they're delivering the goods, and that's the main thing, I think. Particularly when so if you're on a budget, it's a no-brainer. In fact, for that kind of price, you get two. That's my advice.
Well, yeah, you actually make a very valid point there, Steve. Actually, for one, what is the nearest competition? I think the nearest competition is about £700, is it not?
If you're comparing it to say the HT1205 from Rel, that's £700 now, or £699, £700. So it's not quite double, but you could, the added benefit of having two subs in your system, particularly for home cinema, is unquestioned. So I'd say that if you've got them at budget, you should be thinking about that.
Yeah, you should be getting four, one for each corner.
If you've got the budget, I mean, what's that going to be? 450? It's only £1,100.
Right, we're rapidly heading to the let them eat brioche moment.
£1,500.
So let's.
For the next banker, you're shit with maths.
No, I just realised I just did that wrong. Yeah.
Right, so anyway, that's a subwoofer from BK Electronics. We obviously listened to feedback, that's why we did that review, and it will be up this week, so look out for that one on the homepage. Moving on, I am this week going to keep this brief bits.
Shall I start a timer?
Yeah, why not? Because basically I'm going to talk about a Panasonic TV. It's the Panasonic GX800. It's their LED LCD TV. I have reviewed the 58-inch. It's still sitting in the rack. I've just unpacked a Sharp 60-inch, which I'm going to do some side-by-side comparisons. So I'm not quite finished the review yet, but the review should be up end of this week after I do my Sony review, which is done. It just needs to go up. But anyway, the GX800 is an LED LCD TV. It's edge-lit, which immediately, in terms of HDR content, certainly from my point of view, that always raises alarm bells, because to do HDR properly with an edge-lit TV, I've yet to see it being done properly without any side effects when it comes to picture quality, and that's certainly true here. It's a VA panel that Panasonic are using, which means that the viewing angles are not great. It does have a tendency to turn blacks navy blue as soon as you start to get off axis, which is obviously an older trait of LED LCD TVs. The contrast performance is around about 4,000 to 1. I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but I remember it being around that. Peak brightness is under 300 nits when it comes to HDR. Now, it does have Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus, which are dynamic metadata systems, and certainly on a TV of this capability, the performance is okay when it comes to HDR. You got to remember as well that we are talking about a TV that is well under £1,000, so we're not expecting miracles here. It's a edge-lit LCD TV, so again, we're not expecting miracles. There will be side effects to that, technical limitations to that technology, but where the Panasonic will suit is in a brightly lit living room, where there's not a lot of reflective light, because it has a really reflective glossy finish to the panel when it's switched off. It's like a mirror, basically. Nice design. It's well built as well, as you would expect from a Panasonic product, and it is made by Panasonic. This is not a Vestal or a rebadged TV from elsewhere. It is manufactured by Panasonic. Yeah, it has its limitations. It's an LED LCD TV. It's not very bright. HDR is okay. It's not brilliant. It's not going to set the world alight, but you get an HDR image from it. SDR, very accurate. Colour-wise, there are a few issues because we're dealing with an LED LCD panel. It's not like the OLEDs with 3D lookup tables and all the rest of it when it comes to accuracy, when it comes to colour volume and so on. Like I say, it's not a very bright TV, this one, to start with. So colours are good, but not brilliant when it comes to Panasonic, what we expect from a Panasonic. So it really is a middle-of-the-road TV, this one. I mean, it does have some nice features in there, like I say, Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus. There's no other TVs at the moment on the market. Philips will have some soon, but at the moment it is the only one out there. Gaming wise, it's perfectly adequate for gaming. It has a nice menu system. It has lots of stuff in there. One thing of interest was it had HDMI 2.1 in the menus, and that's basically just to switch low latency on. So it doesn't mean it's HDMI 2.1, but I saw that in there and I thought that was an interesting way of naming the item in the menu. So yeah, it's well built, it's well put together. It's a Panasonic. You expect a certain level of quality. SDR wise, it's nice. HDR wise, it's acceptable.
How much is it, Phil?
Ed, it's round about 899 SRP.
Right, so we're not talking super budget telly.
No. Like I say, it's under £1,000. It's designed for a certain market, and it certainly hits all the points you would expect it to hit. And like I say, build quality is what you would expect at this price point. So, I mean, the original SRP was over 1,000, but looking around now, John Lewis and so on, like I say, it's 899.
It's also a bit of a niche size as well, though.
58 is, yeah.
For a lot of people, if you know, you don't want to make that jump from 55 to 65, and you know, there's kind of, when you're quibbling about those few extra inches, if you just want something slightly bigger, it's, you know, you don't have a great deal of choice out there. So, yeah, it's a decent size screen. 58. It's amazing how much bigger it looks than a 55, if that makes sense. You know, just those couple of inches make all the difference, as they say. It's been a really difficult TV to, and obviously Dolby Atmos decoding on board as well. I need to point that out as well. So, you know, it's got lots of features in there. Panasonic have really, you know, put a nice design together. They screwed it together well. It has the features you would expect it to have. It's just in terms of performance, it is a little bit disappointing when it comes to the HDR side of things. But then at this price point, I don't think there's much on the market. Even looking at, you know, Hisense and Sony and so on at this level of the market, they're all round about the same when it comes to HDR performance. Where the Panasonic scores is the fact that it does dynamic metadata with HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision, and that does make a little bit of a difference. But like I say, it's a solid 7 out of 10 TV. It's going to be a solid workhorse TV for your living room. It's not one for those that want to have the picture performance of a reference monitor.
Fair enough. 6 minutes and 41 seconds, Phil. I am genuinely impressed.
And given that's coming from a man who counts months by lunar cycles.
Well, you know, the last week when Phil endeavoured to be brief, there were many words that could be attached to that, but brief was not one of them. Yeah, so today he has been brief.
Again, I haven't had any questions from Steve yet, so... Yeah, normally Steve will ask a question and we'll go off on a tangent somewhere.
No, I'm not asking any questions. I mean, it seems like it's a fairly competent TV. You can't expect much more for £800. So.
Yeah. Okay, and turning up on, when this podcast goes out on Monday, is the first OLED from Panasonic. Now, that's got me excited. I'm really looking forward to that one. No more than that. Check out my Twitter this week. I might give you a few clues on there as to which one it is.
Narrow it down to one of three.
So there you go. Yeah, I only lasted 6 minutes. That's not normally a positive.
Record for you, isn't it?
Right, let's move on. Who's left? Oh, Ed's left. And I've no doubt it's going to be a hi-fi product, Ed.
It is. This will be a brief review because almost everything is covered perfectly satisfactorily in the review. That's not me blowing my own trumpet. It's just a statement of I wrote the review to cover all the bases. It's by a company called Volumio, who you may or may not have heard of before. If you are in the business of playing about with Raspberry Pi style dinky computers, you may be familiar with them. They've designed an operating system that works to turn your Raspberry Pi into actually a very, very capable music server. And what they've done is they've adapted this software slightly and they've built their own hardware to go with it. And the reason I felt that it was worth having a look at is all too often I bemoan a company for designing some lovely hardware and then doing the software in the weekend before they launch the product, and it always shows. This is a product for which the software has existed for a very, very long time, 6 or 7 years, I think. And now they've built some hardware to take better advantage of it. And the result, as far as I'm concerned, is extremely impressive. If you were looking at the review I did on the Roon music software and thinking, well, it's great, but I'm simply not going to spend that much money, Volumio does also have, if you want a full bells and whistles version, it does have a charge attached to it, but I believe it's more in the order of about £14 a year. I may have to check that. It's not a significant sum of money. Let's put it like that. And it's very, very clever. It's very slick. It's very stable. It is enjoyable and it's easy to use. And the hardware for a first attempt is also extremely impressive. So the net result is that for around £500, it's a very, very interesting alternative to a Blue Sound Node 2i. And if you actually read the full review proper, you'll be able to work out which side of that particular argument I come down on.
Okay. Christ, I think we're going to reach the end of the podcast and talk about the final subject this week.
2 minutes. 2 minutes exactly. Actually, no, it's 2 minutes and 2 minutes .08. So, you know.
Yeah, fast.
Stop talking about how quick we've been. We've been saving some time.
Hey, Formula One. Well, no, it's more. I'm genuinely interested about the next topic. So that's
what Spider-Man review.
No,
Larva.
Right, yeah, well, let's move on to Larva. It is sad news. People losing their jobs is always sad. It's never a nice thing. I've been there many times myself when a company is folded and so on. So, that there is the human side of the story, which we should never forget. It's never a nice thing to lose your income and so on. But yeah, Larva have been around for a very long time as well. And they used to be, certainly in the 90s, was probably their golden period in this country. Now, they've always been big in Germany, they've always been big in other European markets. But in terms of the UK, obviously the UK is just a completely different market to the rest of Europe. And it can be a very, very difficult market to crack, basically. And they did do very well in the 90s. I remember seeing their TVs in some of the more trendy hi-fi stores next to the Bang & Olufsen TVs, if you remember them from the 90s. I'm pretty sure they used to use Philips panels in their TVs back then as well.
You're right.
But obviously the design side of things...
But obviously these days they've been using LG OLED panels predominantly, haven't they?
And I've got to say they've been making some really nice TVs. If you want something that is a statement in your living room, and we all know
deep pockets.
Yeah. But we all know people like that, don't we? We all know people who have to have the latest or the greatest or something that makes a statement that you can show off to your mates and so on. And they always had a nice design feature. They always had like the speaker that used to move and so on, and lots of nice little features like that. But like you say, they're coming into a marketplace where all people are interested in is what they're getting for their money. That market where Bang & Olufsen used to do really well with their hi-fis that used to fit on the wall LED and the designer touch £10,000 stuff. That market's gone. That market no longer exists.
You see, I don't think it's as simple as that. It does still exist, but it's now serviced by the same brands who are supplying the panels. I mean, let's be honest, we've seen on a couple of sequential years of release where the same basic hardware underpins a substantial range of televisions. And take, for example, I mean, LG's W series, style is a subjective thing and all the rest of it, but there was, in terms of sheer look at me, I play for a relatively successful football team aesthetic, there was nothing that the W series was unable to do that Loewe was really capitalizing on. I mean, yeah, there were wood inserts and bits and bobs, but I don't think the market changed that significantly. I just think that in the pursuit of trying to recover some level of product margin, the creation of the luxury tier televisions from the house brands just was the death blow, because there just isn't enough of it. Because
Loewe were trying to be too clever with their designs and so on, whereas LG brought out a screen, a rectangle that you fit on the wall with a soundbar, which is basically what the W is. It's nothing more than that. You remove all the electronics and everything into the soundbar, and you've got this lovely thin TV that you can hang with magnets. Loewe were doing something a bit more creative with that, weren't they? They were designing nicer chassis and made of quality materials and all the rest of it. And I guess that's where the market didn't exist for them.
Well, there's an element of flashiness to it. And I think that the W is just in terms of just visual shock and awe, didn't really give much away. I can't remember the last time I pored over the materials that had gone into a television. And yeah, I just think they backed the wrong horse.
But there must be room for it though, Ed, because Bang & Olufsen are still doing TVs.
We don't know how well they're doing. Let's stand on the right side of not speculating on this, but yeah, that seems to be going fine. But equally, B&O is a price up again from Loewe, is it not? I mean, you're talking about an extra couple of grand at any screen increment size, and possibly that allows them to maintain, maintain a small volume production, which is also, let's face it, not, just as importantly, is also offset across other bits and bobs. I mean, not that long ago, I was testing a Bang & Olufsen Bluetooth speaker, which was comparatively sensibly priced, and it has to be said, did all of the things that Bang & Olufsen are very good at. It was a nice aesthetic, and it felt lovely to interact with. So I think that they spread their bases wider about what they did. I mean, the question I wanted to ask, I mean, thanks to our newfound Spotify fame and all the rest of it, if anyone listening to this owns a Loewe TV, or actually, let's open it to a wider, but if you owned a Loewe TV, when did you do so? How, and so on and so forth. Because we used to have one at Mordaunt Short randomly, for reasons that are long lost in history, but that's the last time I remember encountering one other than the EFA. So I'd be interested to know who, if any of the people listening, actually owned one.
But I've got to say, the last time I saw one in a dealer's was more than 10 years ago.
In the early days of LCD, I genuinely found myself lusting after the Loewe TVs. I thought they, from a design perspective, looked a real kind of cut above. But I think just the design of televisions now, it's got immeasurably better. The kind of days where you would have, can you remember when Samsung kind of seemed to have almost like a signature style with the glossy black kind of plastic surround, and that was seen as actually, quite stylish. The style of TVs now that you've got kind of virtually no surround, we're talking about like stands and things like that, and it's all pretty decent material. As soon as you get kind of past that kind of about £500 to £700 range, you're talking about good quality materials, and the TVs look decent. And so I don't know where there was for Loewe to really go. Yeah, well,
I've just been talking about a Panasonic TV, and in design terms, it's the materials used and so on. 5 years ago, that would have been a high-end TV. You know what I mean? And now it's a £800-900 TV.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, as Mark's entirely right, as you reduce the volume of necessary componentry, it does free up the ability. I mean, I think, Mark, have you still got your B7?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I only started using it when I moved into the shed, but the pedestal stand on the B7, it's still, it's a genuinely elegant thing. It proportionally and all the rest of it, and it just feels fairly confidence inspiring, which is important when you're entrusting your television to it. I completely agree with you that there was a step change the moment that you weren't having to spend so much time concealing bulk, crap behind the screen, that it reduced. Loewe were masters at concealing that bulk, but when you didn't have to do that anymore, your options for what you're doing in terms of dressing up are reduced significantly.
Yeah. Steve, we keep being told that the only place you'll make money on a TV is in the higher end. So why have Loewe failed?
I'm guessing they weren't selling enough. Simple as that. I mean, I assume that since they're using LG panels, they were paying the same as everybody else for the panels, and I'm guessing you can get a panel relatively cheaply, given that it's a mass-produced product and LG Display are supplying everybody, apart from Samsung, obviously. So that wouldn't be an expensive aspect, but maybe they were spending too much on all the other bells and whistles. Sort of I'm trying to think. When I saw one recently, there was like a sound bar that came
motorized,
down. Motorized sound bar, all this kind of stuff. I mean, that's expensive to make. So maybe the margins. I mean, you'd think, a high-end product, big margin. But if they were spending too much, look at Pioneer. They had the Kuro, but they were spending too much money making it and weren't selling it for enough. So maybe they weren't expensive as they should have been.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have been going for the B&O level of prices. I don't know.
Ed hit on it with the W series TV, because basically that is the same panel that's on the rest of the TVs in the range.
Yes.
It's no different. And all they've done is move the bulk, as Mark pointed out, into the soundbar. And yet they now have a high-end product.
I always did also think with Loewe that whenever I saw their TVs, given that they were using LG OLED panels for their current lineup, the most recent lineup, given one of the real appeals of OLED is that it's so thin and light, and easy to install. They were putting these panels in these big designer chassis.
That's still what they felt they had to do.
But I think that worked against the whole concept of an OLED. Whereas you got, as Phil just pointed out, you got LG sticking it on the wall with 4 magnets. I mean, when you see a W, whichever generation, a W, it looks amazing, doesn't it? It just looks really cool. You're thinking, bloody hell, that looks amazing. So, when you can get that kind of performance and that kind of wow factor for probably less money, then you got to wonder who was buying the Loewe TVs.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how well they were distributed in this country or elsewhere, and whether that was a factor.
We never got one for review ever.
No.
Got one for review, which was
But it must be said, across. I mean, this feels like speaking ill of the dead, but across. I mean, obviously they did make a select range of other bits and bobs. I have just been reminded of this because after I did the Bang & Olufsen Bluetooth speaker, it became that Loewe made one at £170 as well. And I have to say, as a piece of industrial design, it's called the Clang M1, and I'd have enjoyed typing that many times. But as a piece of industrial design, it's fabulous. But I've just reminded myself why I didn't buy. And the spec sheet, I mean, the Bluetooth version on it is archaic. I mean, no AAC, no aptX, no. And you might say, well, that's not important. And again, Bang & Olufsen sort of got away with it, but it's not as nice as the Bang & Olufsen. They hadn't made some of the same design decisions there, and it still was lumbered by just feeling technologically very old. And there's only so much you can dress up old technology when it's not a record player that allows you to get away with that sort of stuff. And I agree with most of the stuff. We're in an annoying moment of basic agreement here that it does seem like a combination of factors. They've had bits of the market taken away from them. The nature of television design has changed, which didn't play to their core competencies. And then perhaps counterintuitively, they weren't expensive enough. So, and I would also say that Bang & Olufsen as a brand still maintains higher levels of public penetration than Loewe did. Certainly now. I mean, people still sort of understand that if you've got a Bang & Olufsen something, it doesn't necessarily suggest that you have any taste. It does suggest that you're minted. So
it also comes down to brand. And how you pronounce the name of the brand, because obviously we're pronouncing it as Loewe, but when you see it written down, that's not how you think the name should be said.
And also the use of German names like Klang, and I know they have translations into English that's appropriate, like thunder and something to do with noise and this kind of stuff. But it just sounds slightly comical in English. Yeah,
it does. And
are you suggesting that this may be behind why German brand T+A has never achieved the penetration into the English-speaking world that it perhaps its technology deserves?
I think if they added a bit more T and A to their brand, they might sell more.
No, not in these enlightened times. Let's be clear about this.
But like we say, there is a human side to this, and we do hope, send our best wishes to those that have lost their jobs, and hope that you get yourselves on your feet again quickly, because it's never a nice thing. And it's never a nice thing to lose a brand either. It's just obviously these things do happen now and again, and will there be more that leave
now,
the TV
you say
scene?
Losing a brand, can I be clear about that? Just a moment of breathtaking cynicism here. If I was Hisense and I had a look behind the sofa, I'd have that brand name in a heartbeat.
Would you?
Yeah.
I'd
use it as my Lexus.
I'm not sure I would agree with you, because, like I say, saying the name, pronouncing the name, and how it's written down, I think that goes against it. It's not a immediately familiar name. So I don't think
I'm not.
Other
I'm
than
not
Bang &
so
Olufsen or whatever, I don't think Loewe works as a brand.
I don't know. I don't know. I guess it depends what it's been valued at, but I take a punt. I'm not proposing that.
Are we having a whip round?
Let's start a Kickstarter.
I'm willing to design the next Clang.
Yeah.
Well, with your millinery skills, I think a range of fabrics and whatever could be employed.
Oh, mate, it'll end up like Homer Simpson's car designer.
The thing is, this is going to, but every time I rewatch that episode and he describes what the purpose, especially with the separate domes for adults and children, as a parent, that just now sounds like the single most desirable automotive innovation of all time. And I'd quite like someone to do that, if at all possible. So, yeah.
You want one of those little chauffeur windows that you can just press a button and it slides up.
No, I want no contact with the other dome at all. I just need to know that it's oxygenated and protected from the sun. And a cup holder for a really, really big drink as well. So, yeah.
So there we go. It's going to be one of those podcasts, isn't it? But we've managed to do hardware news and the beginning under an hour. We're doing well here, so we're going to go to movies next. Right, movie section. So both myself and Steve went to the cinema this week to see Spider-Man Far Too Long, which is what it felt like to me. Far From Home, but I'm going to call it Far Too Long. I thought it was far too long. I was looking at my watch through this. Now, that's not to say it's a bad film. I actually found some of it to be inspired, absolutely inspired filmmaking. It is going to make an amazing demo disc. There is a sequence, fight sequence, which is unlike anything we've seen for a long, long time. Very, very clever.
Did you see it in 3D?
No, I didn't. But I imagine
really, that scene you're referring to, I suspect the one you're referring to, was amazing in 3D.
Yeah, I can imagine it would
awesome.
be. Yeah,
I saw it in IMAX 3D and it looked and sounded stellar.
Yeah, it's just I've been losing money on my card, so I wasn't going to spend the extra $5 for IMAX. Plus, the screening time didn't work for me. But anyway, that was astonishingly good and immersive sound wise and so on. It's going to be one of those scenes that certainly you're going to use going forward as a demo scene. In terms of story, the thing was it was flagged all the way through. You knew what was coming. You knew where things were going to go without, and I'm not going to go into it too much because I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't seen it, but certainly for me, I knew exactly what was going to happen. It was a generic superhero premise. There were some nice touches. It carried on well from Endgame, which I thought they did really quite well. I mean,
the beginning really does address people's comments about Endgame, but in quite a humorous way, actually. And I thought that was very clever.
Yes, that was very, very clever, and so on. But there was a section where the bad guy in this had to stand up on a table and explain the plot. Which is never a good thing in a film.
I thought he actually did that very well, because it could have been clunky, but I thought it actually played that well. And also the way they tied it in with other aspects of the MCU, I thought was quite clever too. I mean, I think that both Spider-Man films benefit from having villains that have an interesting and relatable backstory that makes them more than just, villains.
You see, I didn't get that. I didn't get that side, I think, because I thought it was clunky.
I think it's...
we can't all agree on the same things, and we shouldn't all agree on the same. If we all like the same things, then it would be pretty good.
I was surprised Kaz only gave it a 7, because for me it was at least an 8, maybe a 9. I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't think it was too long at all. I thought it was superb. I'm
going to side with Kaz on this one. Like I say, I kept looking at my watch. There was characters in it that really annoyed me. I think that aspect of it didn't help. The whole teenage story thing as well, I find that...
He's a teenager. What do you
I know, but...
Spider-Man's a teenager.
I know, but for me...
seems perfectly acceptable to me. The teenage aspects of Stranger Things 3 is annoying, but they're teenagers. It's about teenagers, so you can't really avoid that.
Right, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the aspects that they spent far too long on did great with me. And I didn't think it was particularly well done. I wasn't saying that the whole teenage thing shouldn't be there, because obviously, like you say, he is a teenager. But it grated with me, and the stuff that they concentrated on. So I found it really disjointed as well in terms of the school trip, and then the other scenes on top of it. It didn't really quite flow for me. But there was some absolute moments of genius in there as well.
It's very funny at times as well.
You know what? I was in a screening that was full and nobody laughed once. Oh. I laughed at one point and I felt really quite inadequate laughing because nobody else was...
Must be quite humorless up north.
I don't know. It was a strange crowd I was in with, because it was a lot, obviously Saturday morning, so lots of kids and stuff in there. But no, some of the humour was lost. I could, maybe that impacted on me as well. Maybe, sitting with that type of audience, that's why I was looking at my watch, or things were great, and maybe I wasn't getting the experience that I maybe would have if I watched it on my own. I don't know, but for me, it's a 7 out of 10. I know you're going to raise some points that you really like, which is fair enough. But there was too many negatives for me. Although I've got to say, MJ,
she's really good, isn't she?
She is. She's really good. I really liked her in
The Greatest Showman.
The Greatest Showman as well. Yeah, I thought she came.
She's. I mean, and this time they've given her more to do, because in the previous film she just kept loitering around in the background. But now that they've established who she is, she's got a much bigger role in this film, and I think that is all the better for her, because she is really, really very good, very charismatic. I mean, that girl will go far, in my opinion.
Yeah. No. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag for me. But then I am not as invested in the MCU as, although I'm starting to get that way. And some of the things grated on me a little bit, and maybe the audience I saw it with didn't help. Maybe that rubbed off on my thoughts as well, because it's amazing how much an audience does that when you watch a film, how it can impact a film like that. So
totally. Yeah. I enjoyed it. Did you see it? Have you seen it, Mark?
No, I haven't. I was just going to talk about how audiences can kind of influence you. I tend to go the other way. If you see something with a really kind of poor joke and someone starts laughing, you end up just hating the people around you.
Is that a reference to me being the only one laughing in this?
No,
actually,
I'm with Mark on this.
I just remember seeing The Last Jedi and just kind of people laughing at things, and I just thought, I'm not sure I can ever watch another Star Wars film with people around me again.
Mate, that's good.
I was thinking that anyway about The Last Jedi.
I've said this before, but I mean, I went to see Black Hawk Down at the Mile End Genesis, and it was a unique experience because it was abundantly clear that most of the audience were not rooting for the Americans, which made for a fascinating dynamic. I mean, I need to be clear about this. At no stage did I feel unsafe or anything like that, but it's incredible how the dynamic of the audience does change these things. Whether they're not just sat there being stoic northern and not laughing, or with Mark's case laughing at the wrong things, or in my case necessarily wanting the protagonist to come out of it well, but I mean, I tend to avoid it by not interacting with other people, but on occasions it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time I've had that experience with an audience, to be honest, not going along with the movie. So yeah, bit of a strange one.
I've been burning up. Unlike Steve, I'm still sticking with 100 gigs a month on my thing. So I had some.
Well, you haven't upgraded.
No, because there's no point. Because I'm hoping that I don't want to sign up to a year's contract. Because I'd like to go. But I was burning up some data in the last couple of days because it flipped over last night, and I was I've just been caning 80s films. I rewatched because obviously we would talk about it in a podcast both versions of it, but I rewatched the Schwarzenegger Running Man. What a perfect length for a film. It is literally 90 minutes.
Long all films should be.
Yeah, it just gets everything done. Schwarzenegger gets to say lots of stupid things. There's lots of running around, and it's fantastic. And they're just getting longer, and
but you say that, but then we're quite happy, or certainly like Steve and Kaz are quite happy to sit and watch 8-hour-long, 9-hour-long movies on Netflix.
They are, but not necessarily all the time. I'm putting words into Steve's mouth here, but I mean, I won't lie. Apocalypse Now is one of my all-time favourite films, and of course, that's a whopper. But I don't watch it more than once a year. We'll come back
to that in a minute, actually, Ed.
Yeah, I don't watch it more than once a year.
Yeah.
Because it's just so bloody long.
Well, Spider-Man was 2 hours and 9 minutes. That's hardly that long.
No, not in 2019. That's pretty long.
Well, not when Endgame clocked in at 3 hours.
No. But Endgame didn't feel like 3 hours. This is the point I was trying to make. For me, anyway, it was.
Right. Anyway, I thought it was really good. I liked the villain. I liked the fact that it wasn't just a bunch of aliens or robots they were fighting for a change, which is nice. I thought the dynamic between the actors was good. The comedy worked for me. I thought it was funny. I thought it tied up various loose ends from Endgame quite well. So it did feel like the kind. I know people were saying, "Well, why is this the end of Phase 3 Because surely Endgame was the end of Phase 3." And so it felt like that. But this does tie up some loose ends.
I think what we may be able to infer from this difference of opinion goes back to what we were talking about in the pre-Endgame. Essentially, Steve is properly invested in the MCU. And Phil and most other people with jobs, pastimes, and so on and so forth aren't necessarily to the same length. So I think this is possibly reverting back to type. Steve's investment in this is endearing it to a greater level to those of us who may be more casual observers.
I think there's some some truth in that, because if you look through the comments, it ranges from 10 out of 10 to 7 out of 10, basically. So there is that mix, and obviously there's a few people who score it less than that. But I think
probably I also benefited from the fact that I saw it in 3D in IMAX, which maybe added to the enjoyment.
Maybe.
Because, as you say, there are some sequences that really, really lend themselves to 3D, more so than any film I've seen recently. I think the action scenes was really well done. The effects are top notch. This is one of the few. Anyone who's seen a Marvel movie knows they can just sit through the credits because there's always these little extra scenes. This film, you really do have to sit through the credits because there are major plot points that you're going to miss otherwise. So don't leave until the end of the movie, because there's two scenes, one sort of just after into the credits, which is key, and then there's another scene at the end which also I think is quite important. So this is unusual in that the post-credit scenes aren't just for fun; they are actually parts of the story. There's also a cameo in the first end credit sequence that I had my cinema cheering. I wouldn't say any more than that, but I thought it was brilliant, and I was really glad they did that. So yeah, I thought it was great. I don't know what, but my thought when I came out was, okay, where are we going now with the MCU? Because I'm not that bothered about the stuff they've got lined up for next year.
Yeah, and there's I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there's a lot of Iron Man not being around anymore in this as well, which is like,
well, this is one of the main story. Not one of the not a major plot point necessarily, but a springboard for the story, isn't it? Is that now Iron Man isn't around? Yeah. Who's going to replace Iron Man? Who's going to be the next Iron Man? And that's
Bronze Man.
Anyway, yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. It just, for me, it wasn't quite. I think it just comes down to how invested we are. But anyway, let's move on. We got films opening this week. There's one I am really, really hoping lives up to the trailer. And I'm going to mention it first because I think I got the order wrong on this one. But The Dead Don't Die. This
looks
like
great in the trailer, but try finding a cinema that's screening it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks
Odeon's
brilliant.
not showing it anywhere.
Are they not?
No, I just looked on the Odeon website this morning, and The Dead Don't Die isn't listed at all for any of their cinemas.
Well, that's strange because they run a trailer for this. That's odd that they're running trailers for it.
It might be they weren't showing. When's it opening on Friday, isn't it?
Yeah, 12th of July.
Normally you can book for Friday by now. Maybe they won't be able to book for it just yet, but
right.
Yeah, it wasn't an option in the drop-down box for films on the Odeon website.
I couldn't find anywhere for the local Odeons that was showing the Diego Maradona documentary recently.
But it's the same
one.
Yeah, same with Apollo 11 for IMAX. It was a real hit and miss. I don't like this hit and miss thing and certain screens showing it and not.
Yeah, that's annoying, isn't it?
If ever there was a documentary that needed smell-o-vision, it would be the Maradona one.
But anyway,
yeah, you're right. The trailer looked great. I quite fancy this.
Yeah, it's Bill Murray, Adam Driver, and a whole host of cameos. Yeah. And I don't think we've seen them all in the trailer either. I expect this to be another Shaun of the Dead type thing. I think it's got that vibe about it. It really has, and it looks.
It's just the line when he goes, "Zombies, ghouls." Just the way Adam Driver's delivery is so perfect.
Seeing Tom Waite's name though on the cast does make me wonder.
That might just mean he's a cameo.
I was going to say, is he a zombie?
I don't think he'd require any makeup, would he?
No.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't want to spoil it for people, but
can I just say that whilst I remember, in terms of this limit, not appearing in all cinemas thing, I don't want to get embroiled in the politics of this, but with the Braveheart movie, was the bloke who's in it Angus? Is it Angus McFadden?
Yeah, who's in Botwright?
His effortless, the ability to channel some of the fury of the Scottish nationalist movement to actually get the film into more cinemas, probably with a view to actually delivering a decent box office. Very nicely done. Well done, mate. Careful. Impressive. So on and so forth. Don't want to get any deeper than that, but maybe you just need to take to Twitter in a state of righteous fury and claim that as a zombie it's just offensive and that you may be able to get it. So it's offensive to you that it's not being shown. Sorry to clarify.
Anyway, what else is coming out, Steve?
Annabelle Comes Home. Yet another one of those Annabelle / the Conjuring universe movies, based on the claimed true story of a couple who were sort of paranormal investigators, but obviously it's all bollocks. Annabelle's the doll that has a life of its own. I could do without that, frankly. And there's also a film called Stuber, which I know nothing about, but apparently it stars Karen Gillan, which makes me want to see it, and Dave Bautista, which also makes me want to see it. So,
Betty Gilpin's a hell of an actress.
Who's is she in Glow?
Yes.
Yeah, and she's also in Elementary.
Yeah.
A detective recruits his Uber driver into an unexpected night of adventure. Okay.
It really comes down to who's the detective, who's the Uber driver, and who's the unexpected night of adventure in this, isn't it, really? So, although presumably a detective recruits his.
Yeah, so Dave Bautista is the detective, and then Karen Gillan is the driver, maybe? Or Betty Gilpin, who knows?
I don't know.
Now I'm curious.
If the chases take place in the standard weapon of choice for an Uber driver, which is to say a Toyota Prius or an 800,000-mile Honda Accord.
It is a Prius. The trailer played before Spider-Man. It looks really, really funny.
You get some strange trailers up your way. All the trailers before. Well,
maybe they weren't laughing, Phil, because actually you're in the middle of some sort of weird mind control experiment.
You what?
In the cinema, they're showing you things that you then can't watch to infuriate you. Is there any pattern to the adverts? Are there flash screens inviting you to smoke or consume?
I've got to say, I've eaten a lot of popcorn left. No, I've eaten a lot of Ben and Jerry's.
Well, maybe that's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Just getting back to the point, obviously the trailers played for The Dead Don't Die and Stewart, but I've just got onto the Metro Centre.
Either of those films listed on the.
There's nothing is listed for Friday. So Friday.
Well, maybe it haven't announced Friday yet. That's fine.
Saturday, there's nothing on Saturday either. There's nothing on Sunday. So it looks like there's nothing listed at the moment. So the only one listed is one that we're going to come on to in a minute, which plays on next Monday, 15th.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the films that are opening this week.
Okay.
Cool. If you could find them, go and see them.
Well, they should be out. I mean, obviously, it looks like they haven't done their listings yet, so hopefully those will turn up at the local audience. Hopefully, because I want to go and see that. Right, so we're moving on to 4K discs. What's coming out this week, Steve?
There's only one, 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, which is Michael Bay, going a bit serious for a change. No giant robots this time, based on the true story of a siege in the Benghazi, the American embassy in Benghazi.
Yeah, in Libya.
Consulate. American consulate, wouldn't it? It would have been consulate, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. And basically a group of were they actual soldiers or
they were contractors.
Contractors, yeah.
They were for the most part of professional military origin.
Yes. Anyway, it's headed up by John Krasinski, better known for A Quiet Place and also The Office, the American version of The Office. And I have seen the film actually on Blu-ray when it came out a couple of years ago. And it's fun, well, not fun exactly, but it's well made. I mean, Bay can do action and he keeps it reasonably realistic and faithful to what happened, as best as I know. Not that I know much about what happened in Benghazi, that particular incident. But basically they end up protecting the consulate from, is it Libyan rebels?
Well, basically, there was a fair amount of animosity, full stop. So, yeah, they were defending the consulate, full stop, from all manner of nastiness.
Against nasty odds.
Yes.
So that's out on 4K disc. Out on Blu-ray, we've got Swing Time from Criterion, Hollow Man 1 and 2 Collector's Edition. I don't think you'd probably want either of those. The Hole in the Ground.
I'm staggered that there's a Hollow Man 2.
I didn't know there was one.
There were two. The Aftermath, which is the post-World War II drama with Keira Knightley. Ash is the Purest White. I haven't heard of half these films. American Gods Season 2, which is also on Amazon Prime if you want to watch it for nothing. Doctor Who Season 10. And Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich.
Which the review's on the site for that one.
Which the review for that one is on the site, yes. And streaming-wise, we have LA's Finest Season 1, and also Point Blank. Actually, Point Blank, that looks quite good. I saw a trailer for that somewhere. I might check that out.
Yeah.
That looked interesting.
What is Point Blank?
Yeah. It's not anything to do with the Lee Marvin film. If that's what you're thinking. I can't remember now. It's yeah, I did see a trailer for that. I remember thinking, I looked at the trailer because I thought, is that a remake of the Lee Marvin thing, which has already been remade as Payback anyway, with Mel Gibson. But it isn't anything to do with the Lee Marvin thing, but it did look interesting. I think it's on Netflix, isn't it? So check it out.
Okay, that's streaming stuff. Obviously, Cars are looking at all of those.
Whether he likes it or not.
But he just does it. It doesn't get any direction from me anyway. He just goes and watches this stuff. So yeah, expect reviews of those up. And obviously 13 Hours is on the homepage as well, the 4K disc. Cars give it a 9. So that's been reviewed. So streaming-wise, there was a big series that dropped last week on the 4th of July. I haven't seen it yet, and I haven't seen it yet because I want to experience it the way it should be seen, and I haven't had the opportunity to do that just yet. But that is Stranger Things season 3. I know Steve's seen the whole thing, so so without spoilers, is it any good? Yes,
it's very good actually. I'd say possibly the best season so far. I think it's obviously it builds on previous 2 seasons in terms of the story. And the whole thing with the upside down and that kind of stuff. Introduces a few new things, Russians, which obviously were a staple of 1980s cinema. So that's good to see. All the usual crew are back. A little bit older now, but still look like kids, so we're okay. Although I did see the kid who plays Lucas. I was being interviewed before the series came out. He had a moustache, looked about 35 now. So it does look like they're going for a 4th season, because there is when you do watch it, make sure you stick to the end of the credits on the last episode, because there is a little extra scene.
Is it feature length, the last episode? Did I read that?
It's 1 hour and 13 minutes, yes.
Right.
The film, it's all the things you'd expect are there, i.e. loads and loads of 80s nostalgia. It's set on July the 4th, 1985. It takes place over the course of one day, basically. It's full of references to 80s films, loads and loads of references to all the stuff you'd expect. So that's great. So you can place spot the reference. I thought the cast are good. The dynamic between the kids is excellent. They address, the fact they're all teenagers with their hormones are now raging and that sort of stuff. That's quite well done. The adult cast is also good, although I will say I think Winona Ryder is not acting. I think she might actually be slightly unhinged in real life, and she's just that's just how she is, because she looks too convincing sometimes. Seriously, honestly, when you're watching, you just think like that woman looks like she needs to be serious. Although I've got to say, Millie Bobby Brown looks a spitting image of a young Winona Ryder, which is kind of curious.
There's a time loop causality theory.
Yeah.
By the time it's Stranger Things season 38, we'll be in a
but the production values are top notch. It looks fantastic in 4K and in Dolby Vision if you've got it, or HDR if you haven't got Dolby Vision TV. Bizarrely, 5.1 and not Dolby Atmos soundtrack, which is a little bit annoying. But the production values on screen, there's a lot more effects in this than previous seasons, and they're very good. And basically, it's basically an 8-hour movie. And it does everything you'd hope it would do, and I thought it was great.
Right.
Really, really
there is an argument going on the internet at the moment. Should series like this all be dropped at once, or should they be fed out on a weekly basis to build the hype and keep people interested? Do you go into Stranger Things season 3, watch it all in one go, and then forget about it? Or should they do what Game of Thrones does and feed it out on a weekly basis?
If they're going to do what Game of Thrones does, it has to be shot differently, doesn't it? It has to leave each episode
as a cliffhanger.
Or
at least a cliffhanger, or as a contained episode.
Yes. So it changes the dynamic of any program that you want to do to that. I'm not saying there are pros and cons to both approaches. I'm in awe of people that have the time to binge watch stuff. Whatever happens, if I finally get around to watching the damn thing, it's going to be episode by episode anyway, and over a period of days. So it makes little difference to me, but I still enjoy event television. I mean, the last season of Game of Thrones wasn't all it could be, but I still enjoyed the build-up and so on and so forth. So I do get why people might feel that way, but times are changing, and it's Netflix's toy. They get to unleash it how they like.
I'm kind of at the point where I like to watch a couple of episodes in one, and then I'll go back, and I like it when it does all drop in one go, though. So at least then I have the option.
Yeah, it's your choice, isn't it, at that point? But I see what you mean, Phil, about if you could stretch out the hype over 8 episodes over 8 weeks, it would build and build and build. But that just isn't Netflix model. The Netflix model has always been to drop it as one complete season, and let you binge at your leisure.
It must be said that if they changed it now, it would be weird, but it might be something that they might want to consider with non-Stranger Things, series going forward.
I just saw the I think it was a Twitter feed actually that I was following, or a thread, and I just thought, there's some interesting arguments on both sides there, because like the thread said, Game of Thrones, for was it 6 episodes for 6 weeks. It was everywhere. It was all over social media and all the rest
Although
of it.
for those 6 weeks, it was gradually getting worse and worse and worse. Yeah. Most of the chatter and the talk around it was negative by the end.
I wouldn't mind if, say, that like they split the seasons up or something like that. That you had like half a season, because there is always that kind of thing where you want to watch a certain amount and have hit a point where you can actually discuss something with people. Whereas when you drop it all in one, there will be those people who just watch it kind of, they've done it by the next day.
There'll be Kaz.
Yeah.
If you're friendly.
They're watching it on 10 different screens, But, I do like that sense when you have something kind of that's released sequentially of when you come to the end of it, you're discussing, kind of different theories, where you can't do that with something like this unless you kind of sync up with someone else and say, we will get to X episode and then discuss it,
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Right, so I just thought it was an interesting point to bring up. But our main end of podcast subject, yes, we've actually made it. We've got there at last, is the fact that Steve noticed it. I also noticed it as well, Steve, that Jaws is playing again on the big screen.
One day only. The
15th
of July. But not just Jaws, actually. I noticed that Matrix is being released at the cinemas again for one day to celebrate its 20th anniversary, and to celebrate its 40th anniversary in August, Ed. Apocalypse Now, the final cut, it will be showing in IMAX, among other things.
I've already seen Apocalypse Now at an IMAX cinema, although I can't remember which cut I've seen. So
anyway, that's getting a cinema re-release as well in August. So I think that's August the 15th. So I booked tickets for Jaws. I saw it at the cinema.
Just this minute booked my ticket.
I saw it at the cinema in '75. I was too young, I think, at 8 to go and see it at the cinema, but I did. So it'll be interesting to see a film at the cinema a second time that I saw 40 years ago.
And obviously, I didn't see it at the cinema when it came out because I would have been about 9 months old.
No, actually, I was going to say, I don't know why are they re-releasing it? Because it came out in 1975, so it was the 44th anniversary.
I'm not sure why it's running again, but obviously,
I'm hoping it's running again because they're about to release it on 4K disc, which tends to be what happens.
That would be interesting if that was the case. But anyway,
I know there's a 4K master that they did when they did the restoration for the Blu-ray release, so it's definitely there. So that fingers crossed.
Yeah, so like I say, I've literally just booked my ticket. I had a look at the screen and there's hardly any seats taken yet, so I managed to get my favourite seat. I'll go along and see that on 7 p.m. on Monday the 15th. Good stuff. Right, so what else do we want to see come back to the big screen? Now, I think we need to put a few ground rules down here, because what I'd love to see is 70mm, but there's like 2 places in the UK now where you can actually still see 70mm projected images, and that's just not going to happen now. So I think that kind of rules that out. I think you could say large format, you could transfer it over to an IMAX screen or something like that, but again, I think that takes away from the old 70mm, 65-70mm stuff. So do we rule that out because you can no longer see that the way it should be seen?
I wasn't going to go that deep, mate.
Well, okay, if you want to see it in 70mm, as in projected on 70mm film stock, then yeah, that's an issue. But if someone was to do a 4K restoration of a 70mm film, okay, maybe they do it at 8K, but then do a 4K DI to show, or a version they can show in an IMAX cinema, then that would be valid, wouldn't it?
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that.
Lawrence of Arabia, for example, which I did see in 70mm when David Lean did his director's cut. Right now, when he did a few little tweaks, it wasn't massive, but there was a few little tweaks, and that was re-released. I think that was in '85 I did see that in 70mm, so I've already seen that. But yeah, those kind of films, Dr. Zhivago, anything by Lean really, would be quite good on the big screen.
Yeah, no, I think there's lots of films there that'd be really interesting to see. And like you say, I mean, a lot of the restoration work has been done on certainly some of these things. I mean, when are we ever going to get the Wizard of Oz 4K?
That's coming out 4K disc in October.
Oh well, there you go. I didn't even know that.
And I got there was a survey that Sony were doing. I don't know if you saw this online, Phil, but Sony have been doing a survey. Sony Home Entertainment have been doing a survey for what discs would we like to see released in 4K, and they had a list of various things they've obviously got lined up, and said which one would you want. And then at the end they said, are there any not on this list that you'd like to see released on 4K disc? And I wrote Lawrence of Arabia, Lawrence of Arabia, Lawrence of Arabia, because I know they've done it. We talked to the head of their technical division.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And he told us, he said, they've done all the work, the 4K master's ready to rock and roll, just put the damn disc out.
Yeah.
So
disc-wise, we're going to say, but if we could go back onto the big screen, so if we go back to the cinema, like Jaws is showing, and like you say, Apocalypse Now come back and so on, what other films would we want to see on the big screen, Mark?
I would, well, one coming out, obviously, Apocalypse Now. I would very much like to see that on the big screen. But also Akira is one, I think.
I saw that on the screen.
Sorry?
I saw that on the big screen, and I was in the same, at the screening I was at, because it was just the one night in Bristol. In that same screening with me was Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. I know that because they talk about both of them being, although they didn't know each other at the time, but they were both at that screening because they were talking about it in one of the commentary tracks on Spaced.
Yeah.
So
very cool. Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of big visual spectacle, and I think the colours popping off the screen, the kind of neon would soak the room, and that's what I would look for from that kind of thing. You want something that feels somewhat epic or different to what you get just kind of watching a TV in your living room.
I was wondering if you were going to say Fist of the North Star, but Akira is the acceptable con.
No, if I was watching Fist of the North Star, I'd want to watch the complete series. Yeah,
there are certain things like that they only look right to me on a 4x3 CRT TV. Actually, watching them on a cinema,
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah,
would probably
one of mine.
One, just because it seems to fit the term cinematic just perfectly.
I was lucky enough to see The Good Once Time in America. No, Once Time in the West.
Yeah.
Projected, in at the BFI years and years ago. That was
and were you sitting next to Clint Eastwood at that one?
No. Well, not knowingly.
But it's just one of those films where it's got those kind of big set pieces, and particularly the kind of climax of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It always feels, as the score kind of really kicks in up to that, the final gunfight moment, you just feel like, God, I wish I was watching this on just a huge screen, with the just cacophonous sounds all the way around me. And yeah, that would definitely be one of them.
I would like to see a Cinerama film. It's always
this is Cinerama.
Yeah, something like that.
How the West was won.
Yeah, How the West was won. I'd like to see it because I have seen that on disc, and I've seen it with the mocked up version of it. But I've actually been in the Cinerama screen in LA. But I went to see Avatar, which was projected 3D, and it only used a fraction of the available screen space in there. So I really would like just to see it because. There must be something it must be something to see 3 projectors all synced up, film projectors synced up like that, and have that your whole field of view taken up by that. And I mean, they could probably do that now with the technology they have and make it really interesting. But the fact that they did, when they did it, and the technology really was, I mean, they couldn't do any close-ups and that kind of thing because of the way the technology worked back then. And I don't know. I'd just like to see that. I'd like to see any film like that, but probably How the West is one because I have seen that a number of times on disc, and it's one of the best looking discs out there as well in terms of transfers. They did a cracking job of that.
In fact, didn't they do things like, because obviously the way the Cinerama worked, because you had 3 projectors synchronized and obviously 3 cameras on set, they had to put things like telegraph poles and this sort of stuff where the 2 images would join. And on the disc, they've obviously digitally gone in and cleaned those joins up so it looks better than it ever would look when it was projected.
Yeah.
I should imagine it must have looked a bit of a mess. I bet you they were constantly going out of alignment.
But just sitting in that theatre as well with that huge screen surrounding you, it was you were just like, oh, please show me something in it, because it's such a really interesting thing. So I'd like to see something like that. And I guess, you know, there's the old favourites you could go through and say, well, I'd like to see that on the big screen again. So you mentioned The Matrix. Is that coming back, Steve? Is it?
Yeah, in the summer, next month, I think, or the month after.
Because
that's
not the whole trilogy.
No, just the original.
Yeah, because
I think be like 20 years then.
20th anniversary.
Yes, 20 bloody years.
I know, because I do remember sitting in the cinema. I remember sitting in the cinema and sitting through the whole credits and still sitting there when the cleaning people came in, because I could not believe what I just watched. It was one of those moments where there's very, very few moments like that. But for me, that was one of those moments where I thought, what have I just seen? So I'd like to get that experience again on the big screen.
Before Steve goes in, shall I do mine?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go
on. It's different because, as you know, it's been less of a thing in my entire life. But I guess it comes down to three different things. I would like to see, however much you could tidy up what is a low budget film. I'd love to see the original Mad Max on a big screen, because it came out 3 years before I was born, so I wasn't really in a position to get to see it. And I'd just like to see it in the best possible way it could be done, because it's just one of my all-time favourite films. In terms of what Phil was just talking about with The Matrix, in terms of just being able to if you could, you know, relive being 12 again, and I appreciate the difficulties because of the special effects involved, but Christ, I wouldn't mind watching the original Jurassic Park again, just to see if you could revisit your childhood in some meaning. But I just don't know if you do a whole 4K business.
I don't think you can hang as much on a screening like that, because I've been to a few screenings of films that I did see as a kid and wanted to see again. Indiana Jones is a good one. It was out a few years ago now, one day only again screening. I went along to that, and I've got to say it looked nice on the big screen, but it didn't blow me away type of thing, because I've seen it so many times and seen it on big screens.
Maybe that.
So there is that side of it.
And then finally, I'm not proposing that I'm going to see this, because I already have seen this, but I want Carry On Columbus to be shown in cinemas again, so other f***ers can suffer that. Because I think in part that is one of the reasons why I don't watch a lot of it. I mean, my mother, in a fit of misguided enthusiasm, took my brother and I, and it was just as one of the worst films ever made. It was perhaps not a great, if not my introduction to the business of going to the cinema, certainly an early one. I mean, the omens were bad when she fell asleep, you know. So it's just my brother and I sat there going, "Are we supposed to be enjoying this?" It was just yeah. So I think other people should have to suffer that too. That's possibly not the purpose of this piece, but I think it's important.
I know that I did see that in the cinema, but I think I've just blanked it out of my mind, so I don't have any memories. I can't recall it.
Well, I think that's too convenient and too repressed, and you really need to have them all dredged back up to the surface. So bring back Carry On Columbus to the big screen.
Right, right, Steve.
I go for. I've got three films I'd like to see on the big screen. One is The Road Warrior. Similar reasons to Ed, but rather than Mad Max, The Road Warrior is the one for me. I'd love to see that on the big screen. I think that'd be brilliant.
I'd like to watch all of them. The original is just so perfect and pure in what it is, and shot on a budget of 11p, which presumably means you can't do a 4K restoration of it anyway. But nonetheless,
shot on film. As long as it's shot on film, Ed, the resolution's there.
Ooh, that is exciting.
Yeah, so The Road Warrior for me would be one. For another film I'd love to see on the projector on the big screen, for similar reasons as when I was discussing War and Peace last week. Same director, actually, 1971. There was a film version of Waterloo, which again used literally tens of thousands of people, and the battle scenes are. There's a scene where you see the French cavalry charging as a helicopter shot, and you see them going over the ridge of a hill, and then beyond the hill you suddenly see all the British soldiers in squares. And I'll tell you, I defy anyone to see that shot and not gasp, because obviously 1971, it's for real, and I'd love to see that on a fully restored print. on the biggest screen possible, because the battle sequences are gobsmacking. They literally recreate the Battle of Waterloo in exacting detail. And I also think it's a really good film with a great cast and a fantastic performance by Rod Steiger as Napoleon and Christopher Plummer as Wellington. So that's one of mine. And the film I'd also like to see projected, and I might even get my wish on this one, is the original version of Star Wars. And by that I mean the 1977 version without any changes. And
it's the hope that kills you, Steve.
No. There was a screening 2 weeks ago of Rogue One and Star Wars on double bill, set up by the US, the Academy, the one that do the Oscars, and Lucasfilm provided them with a 70mm print of the original version of Star Wars. The only thing different from the 77 version was it had a Episode 4: A New Hope, but apart from that, it was the original version of the film, which goes to show they do have the original version.
Oh, of course they do.
Yeah, all that crap about it didn't exist anymore was bullshit. So, and I think now that Disney own Fox and everything's back under one roof, we might well see I'm almost positive that after Rise of the Skywalker, which is meant to tie up the whole saga, that we'll see all the films get reissued cinematically next year, and then discs to follow. So,
are you suggesting that if this next tranche of MCU films don't make more than about $8 billion, that Disney this is the equivalent of a silver bullet that will drive both of you to the cinema under almost any circumstances?
I don't know about going to see the prequels at the cinema again. But I'd certainly go and see the original trilogy.
I don't know why it is
behind like a glass case or something in case of emergency.
Down to our last.
Disney are going to make all the money next year, aren't they? Let's be honest about it. They've got so much stuff up there.
Well, I think Kaz wants to raise it as a discussion point on a podcast in the future. Is Disney just going to dominate everything now going forward?
Well, in terms of box office, obviously it does every year now. I mean, this year, if you look at the top 5 films, both in the States and globally, there are 4 Disney films plus Spider-Man, but that's Marvel / Sony. So Disney's still got their finger in that pie. So yeah, and they haven't even released Star Wars yet. Sorry.
I was just saying, in the future there'll be no states. We'll just have wars between Amazon and Disney.
That's probably true.
In 1993, when Frontier Elite 2 came out for the Amiga, if you were sad enough to read the 900 pages of documentation that came with computer games in those days, it had a timeline of how it saw events progressing, and it did suggest that by 2020 it would be the first war between a state and a corporation. So I think we're about on track for that, if I'm honest. Yep. So yeah, good.
Seeing the tanks roll in with Mickey Mouse at the front of them.
Well, maybe.
And on that bombshell.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the bombshell is that nobody in this team has mentioned Theodore Rex on the big screen, because that would be
I'm sorry, I want the intimacy of a film that magic. I wanted to share it with a small number of people, and
a copious amount of peyote.
there is an element that cinemas, if you do buy enough booze to make Theodore Rex enjoyable, that's going to be an expensive trip to the cinema and a thoroughly illegal drive home. So, I certain things are now just designed for the small screen.
But was it designed for the big screen, Steve? Was it a 2:35:1 presentation?
No, it's 1.85:1.
No, I don't want to see it in the cinema then.
Yeah, that's the only reason. The only reason why you don't want to.
There you go. Right, so we made it to the end. We discussed. In fact, we just discussed 2 interesting things at the end there, which is just not like us at all. Normal service will be resumed when we come back on the 29th of July. So please do stay around and come back and see us again then. But that's it for this week. My thanks to Ed Selley.
I'm not obsessed with him. I'm just super observant.
Steve Withers.
I'm pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now.
And Mark Botwright.
It's really nice to have somebody to talk to.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and video. Plus, why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. Also, head over and check out our YouTube channel for videos of the latest product launches and reviews. And while you're there, feel free to subscribe. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again on the 29th of July.